So I was streaming 2K on my YouTube channel last week, and someone in the chat asked me a question that I found pretty interesting. The question was whether or not I felt like Kyrie Irving can carry the Brooklyn Nets into the playoffs this season, and I know a lot of people may not agree with my answer to this question, but I honestly don't feel like Kyrie's going to have to carry this team into the playoffs, because really, I think this team is a lot better than they're getting credit for. I've been looking at a bunch of projected standings for the 2020 NBA season, and the Nets just aren't getting the love I feel like they deserve. So I'm hoping that I can shed some light on this team, and why I think they're going to be so much better than they're projected to be, not only by different websites and analysts, but also by a lot of NBA fans. So sit back, listen to me talk some basketball, and feel free to talk or debate with me in the comments if you agree or disagree with the things I say. So to get things started, I completely understand why there's this perception that Kyrie Irving is going to have to quote-unquote carry this team into the playoffs. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Kevin Durant left the Golden State Warriors in free agency to sign with the Nets, and I don't think I'm going to have to dive into any stats or anything when I talk about this guy, because if you know basketball, you know that he's one of the most talented scorers in the history of the game, and that's just a fact. The problem is he's injured, and there's a great chance that he doesn't play this entire NBA season, because a ruptured Achilles is no joke at all. I'm hoping for a speedy recovery, because KD and Kyrie is easily one of the league's most talented duos, but it's looking like Kyrie's going to have to be this team's only all-star this year. And because of this, I kinda get why the Nets aren't a consensus top 4 team in the East, but I look at their starters and bench, and honestly, I just don't see how this team doesn't finish in the top half of the Eastern Conference standings, even without Kevin Durant. And I feel this way because of the guys on this team who surround Kyrie. I could go on and on about Kyrie, but at the end of the day, he's one of the top point guards in the league, who can shoot from anywhere, is a capable playmaker, amazing finisher, and an NBA champion who has proven he shows up on the biggest of stages. Kyrie's going to be a super important part of this team's success, and he's coming off an amazing season. But this team's success isn't going to ride on Kyrie alone, so enough about Kyrie. Let's talk about the other big players on this team, starting with their other free agent acquisition, Deandre Jordan. Signing DeAndre in free agency was kinda a weird move, simply because Jarrett Allen plays the same position as him. And Jarrett's coming off his second and best NBA season, in which he started 80 regular season games for the Nets, averaging 11 points and 8.4 rebounds, along with 1.5 blocks, so he can defend. He's a great young player, and actually pretty similar to DeAndre Jordan, who averaged 11 points and 11 rebounds and 69 starts this past year for both the Knicks and Mavericks. Not to mention he was an all-star just 2 seasons ago, so he definitely still has something left in the tank. I have no idea who's going to start at the center for this team, because I definitely don't think these are two guys who can play together on offense, even though I think they'd be amazing on defense. The spacing would just be atrocious, no matter who starts with this team. The fact of the matter is that the Nets have 2 centers who are both capable of starting and playing big minutes, will rebound at a high rate, defend the rim, and can score inside. Plus, I think that DeAndre will be like a mentor to Jarrett Allen, who again is only 21 years old and has a lot of growing to do. So I think having these 2 centers is great for this team, because the paint's going to be locked down at all times by either of these 2 rim protectors. Next up for the Nets, they made a move that I feel like has gone a bit under the radar by trading for Taurean Prince from the Atlanta Hawks in July. I'm a Hawks fan, so I've seen a fair share of Taurean Prince playing basketball, and I believe he's going to fit right in with this team. He's a player who doesn't force things on offense and can live without having the ball in his hands much, not to mention he's a solid defender too. He has good height for a forward at 6'8", and he's a 38% three-point shooter for his career, so really if Taurean sticks to taking good shots and playing defense, he's going to be a solid contributor to this team, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be starting at the 4. He adds space into this team's offense, and you guys can expect him to be a plus on the defensive end too. And just like Jarrett Allen, this is a young guy. He's 25 years old, and going into his 4th NBA season, so I don't think he's hit his peak as a player just yet. In his last 2 years with the Hawks, he started 129 out of 137 possible games, and he's averaged 14 points and 4 rebounds on 39% shooting from 3. So I think that an expected stat line for this season would be about 13 to 15 points and 4 to 6 rebounds per game. This team has a lot of good shooters too, so Taurean's going to give this team a lot of space on offense, along with a lot of defensive versatility. If we're going to talk about defensive versatility, I feel like the next guy we need to talk about is Caris Levert, a 6'7" wing who is actually probably this team's second option on offense. And Caris is really the definition of stats not telling the whole story. This past season, he only averaged 13.7 points per game, but for the first 14 games of the year, he was kinda lighting it up, averaging 18.4 points and 4 rebounds while shooting 47.5% from the field. This was before he got injured and had to miss 42 games, so the rest of the season for Caris was all about working his way back from that dislocated foot. And work his way back he definitely did. In the first round of the playoffs versus the 76ers, Caris went off, The man averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists on 46% shooting from 3 and 49% shooting from the field. We got to see the Levert we saw in those first 14 games of the season, and to bring up age again, he's 25 years old and going into his 4th season, just like Tarian. He hasn't peaked and is only getting better. He's shown great scoring ability and signs on defense, so look for Caris to be a great scorer and defender for this team at the 2 guard. So we've talked about Kyrie, Caris Levert, Tarian Prince, Deandre, and Jarrett Allen. We know that 4 of these 5 guys are going to start for this team. So who's going to be that 5th guy who rounds out the starting lineup? That guy's going to be Joe Harris, who led the league in 3-point percentages last year and won the 3-point contest at All-Star Weekend. So the man can light it up. He's gotten better and better every year that he's been in the NBA, and this past year, he averaged 13.7 points in 76 starts, and would have been in the 50-40-90 club if he had shot a little bit better from the free throw line, but 83% is still great. With Joe, there isn't much to talk about on defense, but we all know what Joe Harris is going to do for this team. He's going to space the floor, knock down open jumpers, come around screens, and make things easier for every other player on the court on offense. So unless he suffers some huge drop-off, I will count on Joe having another great shooting season for this team, and open up the floor for Kyrie and Caris to drive, and do whatever they got to do on offense. It's going to be fun. So we talked about how good it is that the Nets have 2 really good centers, and I actually feel like the Nets have 2 really good point guards too. Well, Kyrie's an amazing point guard, but Spencer Dinwiddie's pretty awesome in his own right. He's coming off a great season, in which he was a real contender for the 6th Man of the Year award, averaging 17 points and 5 assists per game off the Nets bench on 53% shooting from the field. Spencer can hit the 3, blow by a defender and get to the rim, and he can pass. So the dude's really versatile on offense and has some length. I mean, he's a 6'6" point guard, and because of that height, he's going to be getting some minutes playing alongside Kyrie. Kind of like how Spencer and D'Angelo shared some minutes this past season. Kyrie has a lot of gravity on the court, but so does Spencer. Spencer's also only 26 years old, so the Nets have done an awesome job assembling some young players who look like they're going to be hitting their primes pretty soon, and it looks like Spencer's one of those guys. Now I'd like to mention a player who you guys might not expect to be a big contributor for this team, and that's Kurucs, who really came out of nowhere to start 46 regular season games for the Nets this last year. And I know that his stats aren't very eye-popping, 8.5 points and 3.9 rebounds, but I watched the Nets a lot this past year, so I got to see a good bit of Kurucs, and the man is a deceptively athletic finisher. He's really smooth on the court. He's not the best shooter, but he has nice form and can improve that jumper as he continues to develop, because he's only 21. He was a nice contributor for the Nets in the regular season last year, so I'm looking for him to do more of the same off the bench for this team. Up next, I'd like to touch on 2 more veterans who I think are very underrated pickups for this team, and those 2 guys are Garrett Temple and Wilson Chandler. Now, Wilson Chandler will be missing the first 25 games of this coming season because of PEDs, so I'm going to talk about Garrett Temple first. Garrett's 33 years old, but I got to see him play a good bit this past year for the Grizzlies and Clippers, and I think he's going to be pretty big off the Nets bench. Like Kurucs, his stats aren't very eye-popping, but defense is a real thing with Garrett Temple. Plus, he can space the floor and spot up for 3. In 49 starts for Memphis this past season, he averaged over 9 points in 31 minutes per game and shot 35% from 3. And again, Garrett's going to be playing about 16 to 20 minutes a night, spotting up for 3. He isn't going to try to score much, so don't expect him to do that, or else you might be a little disappointed. Now about Wilson Chandler, he still has a good bit to give as an NBA player as well. He's 32, and he's not the same scorer that he used to be, but like Garrett, he can still space the floor and knock down the 3 ball. In 32 starts for the 76ers last year, he shot 39% from 3, which is great, and overall averaged about 7 points and 5 rebounds for them too. He's going to score a bit, rebound a bit, and not be absolute crap on defense, but if he does end up being bad on defense, having either Jarrett or Deandre in the game with him will help cover that up. So yeah, Garrett and Wilson are both over 30 years old, but they're definitely not done being contributors in the NBA. I've been talking about young players this whole video, but these 2 guys, along with Deandre, KD, and Kyrie, add some nice veteran leadership to the young mix of Dinwiddie, Allen, Levert, Tarian, Joe Harris, and Kurucs. We've looked at 10 players who are going to be big contributors for the Nets this year, which in my mind means that this team is 10 men deep, which is awesome. There are some young players like Theo Pinson and David Waba who might contribute that I can talk about too, but I don't want to make this video too long, so as the last thing I touch upon before ending this video, let's compare the Nets to other teams in the East. Now I'm pretty sure the Bucks and Sixers are the 2 best teams in the East, and you could talk me into the Celtics being right behind them in 3rd, but I've seen some websites putting the Pacers over the Nets, and that's just silly to me. First of all, we don't even know when Victor Oladipo is coming back from his injury, and they're going to need him. Second, the Pacers lost Thad Young, who was actually a really important piece of this team who could shoot, defend, all that stuff. That's a big loss, and I feel like Darren Collinson's a big loss too. Malcolm Brogdon and TJ Warren are great, and Miles Turner is one of the best defenders in the league, and I'm a huge fan of Sabonis and Jeremy Lamb, but other than TJ McConnell and the Holidays, I'm not super confident in this team's bench. And with Oladipo's injury on top of all that, I feel like the Nets are easily ahead of the Pacers. I feel the same way about the Raptors, who I know are coming off a championship and still have Kyle Lowry, Van Fleet, Siakam, Ibaka, Gasol, but we don't even know what this team's rotation is going to look like. Both Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard were huge losses for this team, and we're going to see guys like Norman Powell and Stanley Johnson playing real minutes for this team. So we're going to have to see how that goes. But that's another team that I just don't know about being better than the Nets. Kyrie's better than any player on the Raptors, and I know the Raptors will still be good this year, but the depth just isn't there like it was during their championship season, and I think that's a big deal. The Heat are interesting too, because of their mix of young talent and veterans, and of course Eric Spoelstra's one of the best coaches in the league, but they're another team that's going to have to fill a lot of holes, but I'm actually kind of confident in the Heat. I feel like they're going to be better than people think too, but if we're talking talent, I just got to put the Nets ahead of them. If I had to make a list without explaining, the Nets are easily better than the Cavs, Bulls, Knicks, Hornets, Pistons, Hawks, and Wizards, which puts them right in the top 8 in the East. Then I feel like they're better than the Magic, Heat, Pacers, and Raptors, which puts the Nets right in the top 4 in the East without Kevin Durant. So imagine how good they're going to be when he's back. At the same time though, I can see the Nets finishing anywhere between like 3 and 7, but I think this team's going to be pretty good. We'll just have to find out when the season starts.